Welcome back, travelers, to Legendary Lore, where today we are going to finally be really starting the story of Dominaria, in which our story starts off with Karn. I'm so happy. I love Karn. Karn's probably my favorite character. Definitely my favorite Planeswalker, I think. He's just slightly above both Ugin and Urza as my favorite Planeswalkers.
What about Ajani?
Ajani is my fourth favorite Planeswalker.
Okay.
Yeah, I sometimes I might put Ugin below Ajani, but as a general rule, those guys, and then Sarkhan. Sarkhan's only fifth because he has blue in his identity. Which I know Urza has all 5 colors, but that's beside the point. The point is, Karn is awesome, and I love him. And he's...
Also, Sarkhan has an extra turn spell.
That is true. So does Karn.
It's true.
And Ugin does too.
What?
He has the artifact that stops other people from taking extra turns, but if you destroy it, he gets an extra turn.
Ah, the Nexus.
Yeah. So, basically our story picks up in the caves of Koilos.
I was going to say, why'd you become Porky Pig? Picks up?
It picks up in the caves of Koilos. I wanted to say kicks up, but then it was with the K of the Koilos, so it was a little weird. So, yeah, basically, Karn is in caves of Koilos. There's a lot of K in this one. But the reason he's there is because he wants to find proof of Phyrexians. He, being Karn, experienced New Phyrexia firsthand. He was almost a new father of machines. And as a result, they tried to turn him into a monster. Venser showed up, saved him by replacing his soul essentially with his own. And Karn got his new spark.
Karn's had a lot of people's souls.
It's true.
He's had Xanch's, which is technically his uncle's. And then he's had his father's. It's weird. He's
got a lot of stuff rattling in
He's got
that
a lot
head.
of baggage.
Yeah, he really does. And this story is basically that. He is determined to prove that Phyrexians are in Dominaria. And he even went to Jorah about it. Him and Jorah are their friends, remember? Jorah is his friend. And now, because of course he's a Planeswalker, he doesn't have that whole memory cap thing we mentioned earlier. Here, he basically is telling her, like, hey, there's Phyrexians here. We have to stop them. We have to eradicate it. And the problem with that is that no one believes him. Because they're like, oh, well, they're trapped on another plane. There's no way they could go anywhere else. It's not like they have some random Rastafarian guy that has a portal in his chest. So...
I thought it was in his arm.
No, it's like his entire body is like the...
Oh, he
portal.
is the portal.
He is the portal.
He is Groot.
Yeah. We are Groot.
That is Phyrexia, basically.
Yeah, it's true. So, basically, Karn's going through, and it's cool because you get to see him kind of alone and to himself. And he, as a machine, he doesn't really see machines as just tools. So he talks to his machines. Even though they can't talk back, they're not sentient. He goes over to them and he's like, oh, you're broken up. Here, let me fix you. And so
That's delightful.
So he'll just, because like one of the things he can do is he can conjure essentially metal. He just pulls it from other locations and he kind of just brings it into existence.
Somebody's about to eat something with a fork. I'm just like, finally got my awesome titanium fork. Which to eat.
So yeah, basically Karn it just has this like this moment to himself as he's going through, and one of the machines actually breaks through a wall into an ancient artificer's cavern, and everything is like super old and ancient. And he's like afraid to make any big vibrations because he knows it'll like atomize whatever's in the area because it's old, like rotting. It's like dust now, and he's able to grab a tablet. But when he does, he winds up hitting something, and then everything else is just destroyed because it's just dust.
That's basically the fossils in a ruby and sapphire.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same idea because these are ancient fossils. They really are. And so he basically goes all the way back to his little campsite, and he looks at a bunch of letters. And the letters are old Jorah trying to tell him about Venser and talk about it. Because Jorah and Venser were like a very like strong group back in Time Spiral block. And then, of course, Jorah and Karn were back in time streams. And then Karn and Venser have a huge history thanks to what happened with Scars of Mirrodin.
Them being the same person.
Yeah, essentially. So Karn is kind of working through survivor's guilt. He's working through the fact that he feels like no one believes him. And he's working through the fact that he feels like people treat him like an object. Because he's an object. He's an artifact. And even though he has sentience, he has his own personality, he is a legitimate individual and being. He's treated, and it's true, he is treated as less than everybody else. He can't age. He doesn't get hungry. He doesn't feel the same way other people feel.
How does Teferi treat him?
So we'll get to Teferi. But there's a cool moment where we get a flashback to Urza. When Karn's a kid, he thinks of his dad. And it's essentially, Karn is in the workshop and he sticks his hand into a furnace and he's like, ow! And then he knows his hand is fine. And he's like, why can I feel pain? And Urza basically tells him, because he's basically indestructible. He says, why can I feel pain? Urza tells him, well, people are less likely to damage something if they feel like they should care about it.
Just like, wow.
And the Karn's like, that's not true at all. People inflict pain just to inflict.
Have you met the people we're fighting?
Yeah, pretty much. And so he says that, and at a later point in the story, he even says, why is it that he would program me to be able to feel emotional pain?
Because he actually saw him as a son. That crazy sociopathic man legitimately made a son.
Or did he just not care?
We'll never know. He just goes, wow, nobody treated me better than my father. And everybody who knows that's really bad. That's horrendous.
It's sad, but it might be true. So, and at the same time this is happening, Karn has actually had an artifact that he's been holding on to. The Silex. The Golgothian Silex that, if you look back in time, is what ended the Brothers' War and ascended Urza to Planeswalkerhood. The Golgothian Silex destroyed everything.
I don't think we put a name to it when we were talking about it.
No, I don't mean no, because we were doing it from
Kayla.
From Caleb and Krug's perspective, so I didn't include that as part of it.
Because she doesn't know what the heck that is.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the Golgothian Silex is a powerful artifact, and so Karn knows that with the Silex, he can probably destroy everything. He can also probably stop people from being able to pay life for abilities.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah. In case that's not clear, there's an actual card now called Karn Silex. Now, with that all said, Karn does eventually find a new cavern. One of his machines, deep in the darkness, actually starts to break down. So what he does, he gets all of his stuff, the tablet and the Silex, and he puts them in a special safe, so that he can actually keep everything contained, right? Nobody else can go inside of it. There's no key, there's no lock, because all he has to do is basically use his magic metal powers and he can unlock it that way. Now, the thing about all this is, he moves aside the papers that Joyer sent him, and then he goes to see what's going on with his robot. His robot is absolutely covered in oil.
Oh.
But the thing is, Karn is immune to the Phyrexian contagion, at least for now. And so he reaches in to the oil, and he feels around, and he finds these cords, these nerves in the wall. And he starts just pulling and tearing them, and Doomslayer rip and tears through the wall. And he goes into the other side, where he sees basically an entire mosaic of Gix torturing Xantia. So he sees this, and he's like, that's Phyrexian. That is very Phyrexian. And
I was there.
And he's attacked by two Phyrexians. Or rather, two priests of Gix. Not true Phyrexians. People who have augmented themselves with machinery but have not been completed. So he does not kill them, he just knocks them out. And he ties them up. He uses these special handcuffs that he creates. He just crafts handcuffs with no key around them. Because he just wants to keep them incapacitated. Because Karn, while he's no longer a true pacifist, he still tries to avoid killing if necessary. He will if it's to stop the Phyrexians or a threat of that level. But if it's up to him, on every level, he wants to try and avoid the loss of life.
I like to think that Karn has a really strong frying pan because he's seen Tangled and saw her fight everybody with a frying pan. He's like, I could make one of those. And then just conjures a frying pan because he can make metal. And then just hits people with it to knock them out.
I accept that. Although his entire body is a frying pan, so he can just backhand them. Which brings us to the next point, where he goes into the Phyrexian caverns, and he sees Sheoldred.
Go on.
He chooses to stay and keep going further in, because he thinks, okay, if I can kill Sheoldred, then I can stop the Phyrexians on this area. All I have to do is kill her.
Valid thought.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to endanger anybody else. because they've already, they know that there's a problem, right? Now, while this is all happening, the person that he had knocked out gets free and sounds an alarm. So Karn's plan was essentially to sneak up on Sheoldred, conjure up a bomb, and then explode both of them. And even though he would die in the process, he would, or be heavily damaged, he could at least kill Sheoldred and ensure that. Instead, he gets there and he's just swarmed by people that are priests of Gix, and he has to start throwing them off of a cliff and off of the bridge that he's on and killing them, essentially. The thing is that they're basically nothing, and at full power, Karn is this massive bastion of an individual. They can just ragdoll them across the area.
He's the silver golem.
Yeah, so they're literally fighting a giant mech, and it's Pallets itself. He's an Evangelion. So they're trying to stop him, and they can't. And then you see Rona. Rona, of course, being a character that we previously saw as a disciple of Gix. She has since renounced her previous god and is now a worshipper, a faithful of the Whispering One, Sheoldred.
That's cool.
So Rona basically has redesigned herself a bit more. She's a little bit more machine-like, and it doesn't look like she's completed yet. Sheoldred doesn't let her be completed, it seems, because I guess she has other plans for her. But as this is happening, Karn's right there. He's crafted the bomb, and before he can detonate it, he has the detonation prepared. And Sheoldred's still completely knocked out. Rona freezes him. An icy manipulator kind of thing happens where Rona now has complete control over Karn, and Karn cannot move anything. While this has been happening, they've been taking flesh off of various creatures and attaching them to Sheoldred so that she can get basically her flesh parts back. Because going through the planar portal is excruciating and destroys everything that's not metallic.
Flays you.
Yeah. So they're basically rebuilding
Or turns you
Sheoldred.
into a little seed.
Yeah, pretty much. And you may recall that Sheoldred has that giant maw thing that she's on top of. Basically, she just has she's a normal person with a spine hanging out, and she just kind of jacks into it. And so here, her ride that she's going to have, they're setting it up, and it's a giant dragon engine. Like an old school Mishra dragon engine.
Wow.
And so that's what they're preparing her for. Imagine a Phyrexian dreadnought in power and size, which they're also rebuilding. The Phyrexians are going all out trying to get these old school war machines, essentially, so they can actually take over and just wreck everything. And Karn's at the epicenter of this and realizes that he may have made a mistake not letting anyone know where he was. And it's at this point that Sheoldred wakes up, and she tells Karn that she has so many plans for him. She turns into a bunch of tiny spiders, and they crawl all over Karn's body, inside of his nooks and crannies.
Oh no.
And then they leave. They basically just violate him, and then they go away.
Oh, like Rolly.
Yeah. So, Rona eventually leaves, and the actual effects go away. The problem is that she also destroys everything in the cavern. She causes a cave-in, and now Karn is trapped under all this rubble. Now, Joe, tell me, what is it that a planeswalker specifically is capable of doing to get out of a situation like that?
Does it have anything to do with their name?
Yeah.
Is it planeswalking?
That's right.
Oh.
Problem is, he can't planeswalk because this place is so, radioactive, essentially, that it interferes with the planeswalker's ability to planeswalk.
Ah, good old plot.
Yeah. So, and earlier on it mentions that planeswalkers avoid the caves of Koilos specifically because it messes with how they feel. But it turns out that here, that's the reason. Because remember there's a whole Phyrexian portal that was originally here. You have a ton of Thran tech that's here. You have a lot of things that kind of do technically have that interference, sure.
This is correct space of operations, no?
No. The caves of Koilos were Gix's and Yawgmoth's when they were Thran.
Ah.
The caves of the damned. So this actually ends, this story, this particular chapter ends with Karn super upset at himself because he allowed himself to be duped. He's now trapped under rubble, and he has no sense of the passage of time as he is trapped in darkness and can't do anything, as the world around him could be completed.
That's crazy.
And that's our first chapter.
Thank you guys so much for watching. You're definitely not going to want to miss any of this. Go ahead and leave a like if you like the video, and subscribe for the rest of Dominaria United. We got some stuff coming up.
I love this story.